This is Bump and Beyond with Yolandi Becker is brought to you with compliments of Dis-Chem Baby City.
Good morning, good morning, good morning. And yes, it's that time. It's Bump and Beyond with me, Yolandi Becker, here on 101.9 High FM. And as always, we talk parenting. And I really have to say that I've enjoyed so much the topics that we've covered over the year so far. I mean, obviously, it's only been 3 shows, so it's not that many. But hey, I hope you've enjoyed going back to school. Last week on the show, we started with back to school. And I wanted you to share a little bit about how it's been. Did you take pictures? Did you post them on social media? What's going on? This week, I want to know, have you survived the first week of school? How has it been? I think it's always like an up and down situation, happy, sad, angry situation, because it is nice, I feel, getting back into the grind and getting back into a routine. But in the same breath, it is also getting back into it. It takes time, and I'm still adjusting a little bit, just into what the new schedules are like. You know, logistically figuring out how everything has to work with 2 kids, driving them to school, getting them from school to activities, all those things. I really sometimes think it takes a logistical degree to be a parent, because it really is a lot of work to figure out all the activities and to make sure you have time to take your children to all these things. But share with us your experience. Maybe if you have some tips with that, I would love to have some tips on how you organize your life. I think we should also have a show on that. That would actually be great to get more tips and to share. I have to say, I'm a mastermind when it comes to organization. I've learned over the years, and I love it, to be honest, to be very, very organized. So we should definitely schedule that. But share with us your experience with that. Maybe you're more a spontaneous person. I value that in people when they can be spontaneous, because I don't have that. That's, I guess, the give and take when it comes to being organized. But on that note, please do send us a telegram on 061 895 1019 or SMS us at 34519. SMSs are charged at R1.50. So always parenting, and today I feel it's a nice one, the topic we're talking about in parenting, just for the main fact that I will be able to say the word poop or poo multiple times during today. And that's always a secret pleasure of mine on live radio, to say inappropriate words live on radio. But I mean, as a mom, you know, the gross factor does seem to diminish. You know, there was like lots of things. If you saw poop when you were younger, or throw up or stuff like that, I felt like you kind of had that gagging experience. And as soon as you become a parent, I don't know. Like the other day, even I was with a family, and their little toddler threw up on my leg, and they're like, "Oh, so sorry, so sorry." And I'm like, I honestly, I didn't even flinch. That's how high my tolerance is for this stuff. It's actually, I don't know if that's also gross. You could also share that with me on WhatsApp or Telegram, to be honest, if I've got a too high a tolerance for grossness, maybe. But yes, our topic today, you must have seen it on social media. If you're part of any, even on WhatsApp, if you're part of any like parenting group, there's always these people who are very open to sharing the diapers of their baby, to say, hey, is this normal? And then you find yourself looking at all interesting different colors, shapes, and all sorts of things in this diaper. And I'm always wondering, it's like, why? Why are we, how high can your gross tolerance be? Because I'm not at that level, to be sharing that. So we've all shared that. Also, please do send me a telegram or SMS if you're one of those people. I would really love to just say, oh, I know actually one of those people. It's absolutely, I don't think it's weird. I think it's been normalized, to be honest. So yes, that's what we're talking about today, is baby poop. And more specifically, we're talking about constipation in babies. I did luckily not experience. So I'm walking into the dark, I feel a little bit on today's show. So maybe I'll learn something. Because my babies, I breastfed for a very long time, both my children, but even breastfeeding babies do get constipation. It's definitely not just formula-fed babies. But I'm going to say I think that was the reason why it was more unlikely that my baby was. We'll speak to our expert just now about that. But for me, that was one of the main reasons. I can't really, maybe now as my kids are older, I definitely have. And I always say to my son, if he just complains about something like that, I'm like, drink more water. It's almost my answer. Again, maybe I should ask that. But yeah, we're talking here specifically about babies today. And my guest today, an oldie but a goodie, just meaning she's not actually old, but she has been on the show before. Registered dietitian and certified lactation consultant, of course, wife and mother of two beautiful girls. Natascha Olivier is here to join me today. Hello, Natascha.
Hi, and thanks so much for having me.
Again. So, yes, you've also got two girls. Did you have constipation problems with your little girls when they were small?
Not really as babies. Luckily, I also passed that one quite smoothly. But yes, a lot of the patients that I do see in practice do struggle. The parents do report that the babies struggle with constipation. So I'm looking forward to talking about it a bit because it's also a subjective thing. It's something where it's not always that clear cut. Is it constipation? Is it a problem or not?
And I mean, lots of parents, and I mean, on that note, lots of clients that I deal with often tell me, no, my baby seems constipated, that they're not 100% sure if their baby is really constipated. And to be honest, there is norms with that as well. And I mean, we can talk about that as well. Maybe we start with that. How often should a baby be pooping?
It's a good question, and it's probably quite a long answer. There is no one clear answer. Some babies poop after every feed. Generally, with your breastfed babies, that's usually what you see as soon as you start feeding. The machines start working and we're making space for new food. But they can also poop as little as every 2 or 3 days. And especially in breastfed babies, they can poop more often than formula-fed babies, but they also poop a lot more variable. So they can have a couple of poop explosions a day and then go without pooping for up to a week or so, not pooping. In that case, I would make sure that I have lots of wipes and everything in store because when they do poop again, it generally is a big explosion.
Oh, one of those nice ones that go like up the back.
That go all the way into the hair, exactly.
See, I knew this is going to be a fun, reminiscent kind of this discussion. But yes, like I said, for me earlier, I do feel that the breastfeeding actually helped with the constipation because I didn't experience that. I might have started a little bit wondering, especially more about it when we introduced solids.
Yes.
And I can't recall that they had constipation, but I remember the poop changing quite significantly.
Definitely.
And that was for me alarming. How often do you see gross poop diapers in a week?
Quite often. I must say, we always have to be careful with opening WhatsApps, etc. You never know what you can find in there and what pictures patients send you.
That would be nice. That if you're like at dinner with friends and then someone says,
preferably don't answer your patient WhatsApps at dinner.
That would be interesting, but great. I look forward to getting into this a lot more.
This is Bump and Beyond with Yolandi Becker is brought to you with compliments of Dis-Chem Baby City.
Yes, welcome back to Bump and Beyond. And today, our wonderful show, we're talking about constipation in babies or in children. And like I said, for me, it's already been a fun topic. So if you've just joined us, you will have to go listen to the podcast later because lots of poop jokes are going to be following, I feel. My guest today is a registered dietitian and certified lactation consultant, Natascha Olivier. And yes, I said it. She's that magic combo of dietitian and lactation consultant. That's the type of person you want because she knows everything about feeding. And just before we went to the break, we were talking about the beautiful photos that you sometimes see on social media. So please join in the conversation, of course, as always. Like I said, even if it's just a funny comment, even if it's not funny, you don't have to be funny to be sending me a message. If you have questions about your baby's own regularness. I don't know if that's actually a word. But please do send us a telegram on 061 895 1019 or SMSs at 34519. SMSs are charged at R1.50. And remember, if you don't have our HiFM app yet, you need to go download it, because all these things, you just like click on it and then it goes to Telegram and you can send a telegram while you're listening to HiFM. It's really great. So you should go do that. My podcasts are available also on HiFM.com, and of course all the other podcasts of the shows on HiFM are available for you to go listen to on your own convenient time. But back to the topic of poop. Before the break, like I said, we were talking about what different or how regular your baby should be pooping, and the pictures that people send on social media, and apparently to Natascha also, her patients do sometimes send her some pictures. That brings us to the question, because it is interesting in some ways, is what should baby poop look like?
And it's such an interesting question because it really comes in almost all colors of the rainbow. I don't know how many of you changed your baby's first nappy in hospital, but that very first nappy is like a thick, tarry, dark, almost black situation. Yeah. It's sticky. It's really difficult to get off. It protects baby's intestines initially, so it's really necessary, but we do appreciate when the blackness and the stickiness leaves. Very often then we move towards a green, and it can be like a really olive, darkish green, funny color for a couple of days. And then it depends on what baby is fed in terms of what they look like. So if your baby is breastfed or mainly breastfed, you'll probably see, and this again links in so nicely with food, that mustardy yellow color. And you'll see some almost like cottage cheese type white curds in there.
I was actually wondering how you're going to explain this verbally over the radio. And I like that visual that you've given us.
You'll never look at mustard and cottage cheese the same way.
Cottage cheesy situation.
And the important thing to keep in mind also is we're not just looking at color, we're looking at consistency. So like you mentioned, breastfed babies generally do get less constipation. So their poop will be a little bit more mushy, a little bit softer, sometimes even watery. I get quite a couple of parents that are then worried about diarrhea. Generally not diarrhea.
I can very vividly and clearly remember it because my son, and you mentioned it earlier, after every feed, he had a poopy diaper. And in the beginning, you feed them like 8
all the time
to 12 or something times a day. So that is a lot of poopy diapers. So within, I would say, 2 days, you are an expert diapers changer.
Definitely.
You never, I honestly, I never changed a diaper before my son was born of any. Why would I? And this is like I said, I get like and then all of a sudden you're changing diapers and you're non-stop, like non-stop. Also a point on that note, not poop related, pee related. Remember, with a little boy, to make sure that you aim the penis down. Oh, I wanted to say penis. That's actually add on.
I see you've got lots of interesting topics coming for this year.
Tips and tricks on how to change diapers. I really like that. Yes. Okay. So we were on.
So we've covered the breastfed babies.
Yes.
Formula babies, you won't see that bright yellow. It'll be something between a pasty beige, more to like a brownie color. And very often you'll also see that the consistency is a little bit almost like more like toothpaste, so a little bit more pasty. Can also be mushy, but with formula-fed babies, you can also have occasional harder stools. So you can have pieces or bits in between. Shouldn't be normal. It shouldn't be looking like boktrolikis almost. It shouldn't be harder pieces, but they can have harder pieces in between if they are formula fed. Mixed fed babies, you'll have something in between depending on how much breast milk and how much formula. And then just as you think you know what they're supposed to be looking like, you probably start adding solids and you start feeding your baby food, and then you're in for another whole ride, and the consistency changes, so it gets a lot harder. Not a lot harder, it does get harder, so it's not that mushy wateriness anymore. And you'll also see the color then changes to what we know as normal poop, more of a brown, unless, of course, you're feeding beetroot or all those kind of interesting things that you'll see remnants of in the diaper as well.
I don't think because I don't really like beetroot, so I don't think I ever introduced beetroot to my children.
Beautiful bright red.
And now I'm a little bit disappointed. But
you missed out.
You know what's so funny, though, is that my daughter now really likes beetroot, actually. Some friend or someone, probably when we went for a braai, had beetroot and she tried it because, like I said, I don't really like it, so I'd never make it. And now she likes it. Now I'm forced to make beetroot.
The things you learn with kids.
It's fun, isn't it? So, yes. For me, I can very clearly remember, and the smell changes also when you start introducing
dramatically. You think it smells bad before they start food, but
it's really then it really becomes an effort to do it. It takes a little bit of time for your grossness factor to adjust.
To adjust again.
If you've just joined me, we are on 101.9 High FM. And I'm talking to dietitian and certified lactation consultant Natascha Olivier about constipation in babies. So we've now, before we even got to the constipation part, we've covered kind of how often they should poop and what the poop should look like, so that you kind of just also know what is normal and what's not normal. Because a big thing that I even in practice see is that, and it's people struggle, and she said it's like even with breastfed babies, sometimes a couple of days of not pooping is very normal, but that's when you start to wonder. And lots of moms tell me their baby is it looks like they're cramping or struggling to get the poops out, exactly. And they've got this face that they're making.
They're working really
hard to do it, and then they are thinking that their child is constipated. Is that normal that they struggle and wiggle like that? Does it mean they're constipated? What is happening there?
It's extremely common. And the reason for this is, if you think about it, hopefully, babies don't poop in utero. So while you're pregnant, they don't actually poop. It all gets sorted out via your blood. So once they're born,
because they also don't really take anything in through their mouth.
Exactly. So it's all related to their blood. So now they're outside and suddenly they feel that there's something weird, but they have no idea what they're actually supposed to be doing. And yes, supposed to be reflex driven, but I still need to figure out which muscle needs to contract, which one needs to relax, because you might have had this yourself if you had constipation, if you've experienced this before. You actually need to work on your intra-abdominal muscles and squeeze those and push out. But you need to relax your pelvic muscles, your pelvic floor muscles, to allow the poop to actually exit. So you need to be pushing and relaxing at the same time, which sounds a lot more complex than it is for us to now go to the bathroom.
I wanted to say, I hope I forget this part of it. I feel like it's one of those situations
you didn't need to know.
If you have to put in your PIN for your card, if you really think about it, you completely forget it.
True.
And now I'm I hope I don't think about this.
No, with time, it totally comes naturally, but initially that reflex might not be that obvious. Yeah. So they need to learn this new skill. They need to figure out how this works. And also, if you think about it, you've never had anything working or moving through. Now suddenly you're feeling things that you've never felt before if you do this.
Yeah.
So it just feels weird. It confuses them very often. So the effort and the squirming and the face and the turning red, some of them really shake, go completely red. It's not immediately a cause for concern. It's not something we need to be worried about. Probably they are just practicing a new skill, but we have a fancy name for this so that it doesn't sound so boring. And some infants actually develop what is known as infant dyschezia. So more simply known as grunting baby syndrome. Oh. And it's exactly that. Very many babies will scream, they will squirm, they'll grunt for anything between 20 and 30 minutes, 10 to 30 minutes, which is quite a long time. So we can expect parents to be concerned. But the big difference between dyschezia and constipation is when they pass that stool, it's actually a normal soft stool. So that means they're just trying to figure out how everything is working, and it's not an immediate sign for concern.
No.
If they then repeatedly do not poop, or they've got these little hard pellets coming out repeatedly, that's when we start getting a little bit more worried. So if they are struggling, but they are eventually passing a soft stool, and like I said, this can take up to half an hour.
No.
Then that is not a case of constipation and not something that we need to be super concerned about. And also, like with babies and everything, as soon as you think they're in a routine, they go and change it up again. And that's what we need to remember with pooping as well. It's variable. They'll poop on the clock, 12 o'clock every afternoon for 5 days in a row. And then you'll have 5 days of nothing. And any parent would get concerned if they are squirming, they are complaining. But we need to remember that pooping is variable. They're not on a rigid set schedule.
I'm not
Exactly.
Sheldon from Big Bang.
Exactly.
But also, I always say to parents, when they ask me that question, I'm just like, have you ever laid down and pooped? No.
So true.
Because
So
it's impossible, I feel. So I also just feel that the way that they are, and sometimes you could even see it even with a burp with babies, that as soon as you then pick them up, then they kind of let go, and then everything goes on you, and it kind of just happens, and then you're like, and burp comes out, poop comes out. Fun times. Like I said,
everything.
like reminiscing of all these things. But okay, so if they're now struggling, they're not really struggling, they're just trying to figure it out. That's what it is. If we then figure out that they do have constipation, how do we then relieve the constipation?
That is something that I think needs to be talked about a lot more often, because what is the first thing we think about if we think constipation? We want to go buy a laxative, or in many cases, and again, this sounds disgusting, we want to manually stimulate the rectum to actually relax. And that is something that a lot of parents do without actually even thinking about it twice. But we need our baby to start learning that these are the muscles I need to relax for the poop to come out. So if I'm going to give you something every time and I'm going to do something for you, they don't learn. So we need to let them, and we need to give them that time. And in that regard, I would strongly recommend avoiding all laxatives, and also avoiding that little bit of glycerine around the bum area, etc., to try and help them, because yes, you're helping them for that poop, but you're not helping them in the long run. So if you do want to start anything like that, always consult your healthcare practitioner first, and make sure that what you are doing is something that is sustainable, because you don't want to be standing there for years and years trying to do that. But in the meantime,
I can very assuredly tell you definitely not.
What you can do, though, is you can make your baby a little bit more comfortable in those times. One thing you can do, for instance, is to let them have a warm bath. The warm water can help them relax, hopefully not necessarily in the bath, but the process can relax everything. You can also do gentle exercises.
It does sometimes, though, happen.
It does. It totally does. You're not a parent if you haven't done that and scooped some things out of your bath. Other things that you can do is gentle exercise with your babies, almost like bicycle legs. So gently push in the knees to the tummy, gently push in, hold for a little while, take the next one.
I also feel like that technique kind of, like how we sit on a toilet. Exactly. It kind of has the same. It
applies pressure to the right place and relaxes.
I'm very sure there's a word for like the
squatting position. Exactly.
So you're doing that with the little baby.
And then importantly to remember that this is a skill your baby needs to learn. So to give them that time. It's not something that they need to have mastered by day 1, day 2, day 3.
I mean, I guess so. Clearly not. We do it. We take it. See, we take the skill for granted as adults.
We do.
But before we get to now, we've talked about what you should do when you feel like your baby is constipated. Obviously, you should maybe also, if you're really concerned, consult a medical professional on that regard.
Definitely.
But how do we know when then our baby is constipated? Because now you said we shouldn't be worried about the grunting and whatever initially. But when should we start worrying?
The reality is, again, this is not always a clear-cut line, because a lot about constipation is subjective. What means I haven't passed in too long a time? What is too long a time? So generally what we're looking at is if they've had 2 or fewer poops per week, but not just once off. So we want to ideally, according to the criteria, look at a month, which feels very long with a baby that is struggling. But they should have 2 or less poops per week consistently for a month to be able to fall into that category. Also, very often you'll see that the stools, and that is a big part of constipation, will be dried and they will be harder. So it won't be mushy, soft poop that comes out. It will be pieces of poop. And again, that has to happen recently. And very often it's accompanied by straining and pain. So you can see how parents get confused, because babies are straining as if they are in pain for longer periods. They might not be pooping every day or every second day. But generally, when you need to become concerned is if they have poop 2 or less times a week. For
4 weeks.
A little bit longer. I would say a month is probably very long, especially for a little baby struggling with it. I would take my baby to the doctor sooner. but it's not something that once off they've waited for 5, 6, 7 days. And remember, especially your breastfed babies, they can go up to a week, maybe even 10 days without pooping.
I honestly, if I just think about that, I would go mentally.
It would
insane.
stress you. It would definitely.
I remember
definitely
because my son
stress
was so regular, in the sense of, like I mentioned earlier, it was like definitely like at least 8 diapers a day. I remember then there was one day that he didn't poop, which is, of course, I realize is normal then. But if it's so regular and then it doesn't happen, then you're like, what? Where is the milk going?
I think the one thing that we can stand by and be grateful for is that studies show less than 3% of babies actually have constipation. So that's a very, very small percentage. It does increase as they get older. In the second year of life, it's closer to 10%. And then in the third year of life, it actually increases to 25%. But if we have time at the end, we can discuss why that is. But that's generally as they get older, as you introduce more solids and you start potty training, all those kind of things. But in a baby, about 3%. So 3 in 100
So it's
babies.
relatively,
I
mean, it makes actually, if you think about it does make sense a little bit because they are the liquid diet. It's not, and they're built to digest the milk.
Exactly.
So it makes it does make sense.
But if you are concerned,
what would then cause them to be constipated?
You obviously get your problems with connections, etc., and medical problems where something needs to be changed, like Hirschsprung's disease, etc., where the gut doesn't function properly, and those will be picked up quite early on because things just don't pass through as they would. What you can have a look at, or what could cause constipation, is, like we've spoken about, formula-fed babies are a little bit more constipated. Simple fact is breast milk is easily digested and it's almost completely digested. So there's not a lot that we need to send through the system. Formula is not as completely digested, so there's a lot more bulk that actually needs to move through the whole channel, and that's why it also is a bit thicker, a bit more difficult to pass through, so it takes a little bit longer and all those things, if we can just think about that. So if you have more residue that needs to move through, it will take longer and you will have harder poops. That is normal. So if you move your baby from breast milk to formula, or you switch, then you will have some problems in there, or you can encounter some constipation.
This is Bump and Beyond with Yolandi Becker, is brought to you with compliments of Dis-Chem Baby City.
And just like that, it seems like we are starting to run out of time, unfortunately. And what a fun and interesting show it's been today. I've learned, I think, too much about constipation, I feel, today. But if you've just joined us, you are on 101.9 High FM. This is Bump and Beyond. And today we are talking to a dietitian and lactation consultant, Natascha, Olivier, about exactly that, constipation in babies. And in general, I feel we were talking about what's normal. And she said it, 3% of babies are actually constipated. So more often than not, I then feel that it's a concern for us, but it's like a very invalid kind of concern.
It's a very small concern.
It's a very small concern. But before we went to break, you did mention, though, that formula-fed babies are more prone to get constipated because it takes a little bit more work to digest it. It's not so digested as formula milk, but that also sometimes brings a tendency that moms think, oh, this is not a good formula.
Yes.
And I have to change it. Is that the case? Should you be doing that?
We see that very, very commonly, that parents go formula hopping and they buy one formula and they give it for a day or two and it doesn't seem to improve, and then they go out and buy the next one, or they buy a small tin and it lasts them 3 or 4 days and they get the next formula. And you need to give your baby's system also some time to actually adjust to what is happening. So I would generally recommend that you give a formula for 2 weeks at least to see what's happening. And also then be very careful of the marketing that's going on outside there. A lot of brands, or some brands, have a huge variety, and they have a formula for almost every condition. They have something for diarrhea, something for constipation, something for literally everything under the sun. But that doesn't mean if my baby has constipation today, he's on this formula. Tomorrow he's a bit refluxy, so we move him to the next formula. And unfortunately,
it sounds like
see that.
Expensive.
It's expensive and it gets so confusing. I mean, if you walk into a pharmacy and you look at the endless supply of options, you don't know what to choose. So in that case, choose something or get a healthcare professional to help you choose a product, and then stick with that for a bit to give your baby's system chance to actually adjust to that. A lot of parents are also concerned about the iron that is added to formula and that can cause constipation. And that is not the case, because yes, iron supplements as such can cause constipation, but the dosage of the iron that is added to formula is much, much lower. So that is not something that we need to worry about. So in conclusion, we always prefer breastfeeding where it is possible, but don't make that an issue that you're not going onto formula or that you're not giving your baby formula because you are worried about constipation.
Oh, see, I'm learning so much. Yeah, I'm loving it. Also for my clients, so future clients, be wary. I know my stuff. So another thing then, obviously we mentioned that as well, that the poo changes quite significantly when you start now with solids and stuff like that. And you do need to start also then giving some water, I assume, when you, this is what I've learned, is that you do give some water. But sometimes people also think that then if your baby is, constipated when you start with solids, that there's specific foods that can help with the constipation. Does it actually, like, these old wives' tales that you should give them either fruit like prunes and stuff like that, or fruit juice, diluted fruit juice can help, or I assume it's to increase the chances that they're taking the liquid in, and then, I don't know, but does it actually help?
I want to take it one step back and start off with foods while you are breastfeeding. Do the foods that you eat while you're breastfeeding actually influence your baby and constipation? And there really, we don't see a big risk. The only chance where this could happen is if your child has a cow's milk protein allergy. There's a small percentage of babies that have cow's milk protein allergy where the symptom that we actually diagnose it from is constipation. So those babies can become constipated. And in that case, yes, we would recommend that the mom see a registered dietitian and go onto an elimination diet to cut out all cow's milk protein allergies.
Also for a while.
Yes, for a while, and it needs to be monitored, and we will be challenging again. Yeah. And obviously with starting solids, then there would also be some advice.
That is the future discussion. Cow's milk protein allergy.
We'll need to get back to that. But once your baby starts solids, you do expect the poo to change a little bit. So it will get a little bit harder. And they might also change in terms of frequency a little bit. So they might poop less often. And you might even start them moving towards a bit more of a routine at that age. There aren't specific foods that you should be avoiding. We want to go with general advice, like not giving too much sweet and sugary food, trying to avoid sugary drinks, especially carbonated sugary drinks have no place whatsoever. We want to limit refined carbohydrates, so things like white bread. We do want to make sure that we include a little bit more whole grains, especially as they get older. Obviously, you won't give them a whole grain bread at 6 months, but we want to make sure that we are including enough whole grains and including enough fruit and vegetables, especially. In terms of fruit juice, infants under 6 months should never be given fruit juice or anything other than formula or breast milk. We do see it happen in practice, but it's not recommended at all. So under 6 months, nothing else unless prescribed by a healthcare professional. Once you start solids, again, if you are preventing constipation, we want you to focus on fruit, vegetables, on whole grains as such, because those include fiber and that helps the poop move through a little bit faster. If they do struggle with constipation, we can make use of things like rehydrated prunes. They do actually help because of the fiber content. They do actually help. And we can also then mix them, for instance, into oatmeal, into oats for breakfast. Oats is a very good option, also helps against constipation, and we prefer this over rice cereal, especially prolonged. If you give rice cereal once or twice, it really doesn't make a difference. But for a prolonged time, we can add those kind of things. And then just on the topic of fruit juices, according to the American Academy of Pediatrics, they recommend no fruit juices whatsoever under 1 year of age, just because it is a lot of empty calories, it's a lot of sugar, and it doesn't help your baby to grow. If they are over a year and they are struggling with constipation, we can make use of fruit juices, specifically prune, pear, and apple, that work quite well in small quantities just to help things move along a little bit. Again, we don't want to do it daily, but that can help to move things along just a little bit.
Again, I just love that we're learning so much about. And I mean, I think even those type of things where you're mentioning now, we're kind of filtering and going in the direction, I feel, of older children as well. Because again, the likeliness of an older child it's more likely that they will be constipated. And that you need to have a healthy, varied diet with whole grain bread. And before we go to the ad break, I want to actually ask you that. It's like, because my kids really, they do eat whole grain bread as well. These like, what do you call it? Sourdough bread.
Yes.
And also these type of things. But also you get these white breads now that has like, is it actually really better for you than refined white bread?
You know what? That is one thing that I am so excited about, that they have brought out these white breads that are so fortified.
The best of both.
Yeah. Exactly. We know which one we're talking about. If you compare the amount of fiber in best of both to even your whole grain breads, it is amazing. They have so much fiber in. So that is one fight I'm telling my patients, pick your fights wisely. If your child is absolutely adamant on white bread, go ahead and give them best of both. And make sure that that is not all they're eating in terms of fiber or in terms of carbohydrates, but that is one fight you don't need to be picking.
Great. Fantastic. But more on this, or finishing up just now after this ad break.
This is Bump and Beyond with Yolandi Becker is brought to you with compliments of Dis-Chem Baby City.
Just like that, another show has come to an end, unfortunately, and it was a good one. And if you've missed it, please remember to go look at it. The podcast will be available on highfm.com. Of course, you can go search for me, yolandi.becker on Instagram, and I always share the links to my shows on there and previous shows, the ones I love the most, because unfortunately they only allow me to put 5 on, so I can't put 100 on. I think there's only 50 in total, so you can really go learn quite a bit about parenting. If there's specific shows that or topics that you would like me to cover, please do send me an email at instudio@highfm.com or yolandi@goodnightbaby.co.za, and I would love to cover a topic that you want to talk about. Or if you've got something important to let me know, please feel free to email me. On that note, before, I have to just say thank you so much, Natascha, for joining me today. How can people find your details?
Thank you. It was such a lovely session. You can find me on Instagram or Facebook. I am the lactation dietitian. So if you search lactation dietitian, you'll be able to find me, or you can email me at lactationdietitian@gmail.com, and I look forward to hearing from you. Thank you. I had such a nice morning.
Yes, me too. I told you, it brings you like an internal satisfaction to say inappropriate things on live radio. And this is being recorded. It's like extra satisfaction. But on that note, we've come to an end. But next week, please come join me as we talk about mom wine culture. This is a personal share for me that I want to share with you as well as with other moms. It's become a little bit of like I said, a culture within moms that it is absolutely normal to drink a glass of wine at the end of the day, and you have to drink a glass of wine to unwind, and I really, really want to dig into that. So if you have questions or comments or something that you want to share on that note, you can already email me at Yolandi. It's Yolandi with a J, remember, at goodnightbaby.co.za. And next week I speak to Janet Gourand. It's exactly about. She's from Tribe Sober, and we're going to talk about mom wine culture. One of the greatest gifts you can give your child is the example of kindness. Thank you so much for joining me. Until next time, enjoy your day.